well, well. The G37 has somehow made it to its third track day unscathed. Since there was only one day in between the previous track day and this track day, I made no changes to the car. To start off the first session, I'm going to yap just a little bit. But I did end up getting 3 laps in since air temps were still decently cool, and these laps were decently consistent. For the first time, I was also able to get the Track Addict app to finally connect to an OBD dongle, so I'll throw in a few of the recorded laps on it, but I still didn't use it terribly much on this day. After the second session, I did drop the front tire pressures just a bit since the track temp was rising rather quick. And after that session, I also added 2 clicks of damping on the front coilovers just to see how the car would react. Now in the 4th session, after completing the first 2 push laps, I decided to go for a 3rd lap, since the trans temp was still well within the operating range. I did end up setting my new personal best time at Pueblo Motorsports Park during this session, so I'll have that lap at the end of the video. Now turn 3 is one of the areas that I know I can gain time on. So going into turn 3, I lifted just a little bit less than I had on the previous laps. Well, the rear of the car dropped off the edge of the track, and then the rear tire ended up catching the curb right after. Now from looking at the footage, I do believe that I turned in just a tad early on this corner. But I do believe, in possibly my own ignorance, that I could have carried that speed through the corner. Now, the 5th session ended up being the most eventful session I've ever had on track. And that was my first time going 4 wheels off at the track. And I almost thought that I was going to launch off the dirt mound in the center of the track. Now, I'm no expert, but I definitely missed my turning point by a few feet. When I compare the 3rd and the 6th lap of the session, you can see that I was at least 2 feet offline. And in the 2 still pictures that I have, it's very obvious that I was much closer to being at the apex during the 6th lap. Now, thankfully, the car was still drivable and there was no major damage. The worst of the damage was the fact that my under tray got dented, but it did its job of protecting the oil pan and cooler lines. And the last of it was that I bent the rear subframe just by the rear camber arm. Now, even though the car had no problems after the 5th session, there was a rather loud scraping metal noise when I was heading out for the 6th session. I originally thought it was just a rock stuck in between the brake rotor or possibly the brake dust shield, but I couldn't find anything when I was doing a quick look over. But it did stop with just driving a little bit in the paddock. And once again, the G37 somehow made it through another track day with no major problems. I finished the day up with 2 laps of a 55.9 and a 55.6 flat. And after that, I then tried to pack up quickly since there was a rather large storm coming in. Unfortunately, it will be some time before I'm able to get the G back on track. So in the meantime, I'm going to do some research into a racing ATF fluid and possibly doing some AN lines for the transmission to hopefully fix the transmission spike problem.